We understand your message, but some people ask themselves, will you be tweeting differently once you board the Air Force One? Thank you. No, that's other people that do that. I don't. I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius. Go ahead. There are moments when Donald Trump's favorite subject walks into the room before he does. Not the economy, not foreign policy, not even his enemies. His favorite subject is himself. And the strange part? The moment Stephen Colbert realized that, everything changed. Because what started as a late-night joke slowly turned into something far more dangerous for Trump. A psychological trap. A public test. And according to millions watching that night, Trump walked directly into it. But the most shocking part was not the challenge itself. It was the reaction. Because the second the words IQ test entered the conversation, something shifted in the room. The smiles changed. The pacing changed. Even Trump's voice changed. And Colbert noticed it instantly. That was the moment he stopped treating the exchange like comedy and started treating it like evidence. Donald Trump has spent years building one of the most carefully repeated personal brands in modern politics. The billionaire mastermind, the deal-making genius, the man with the unmatched brain. He has repeated it so often that millions no longer hear it as a claim. They hear it as part of his identity. The experts don't understand. My instincts are better. Nobody knows more than me. My IQ is one of the highest. Again and again and again. It became a rhythm, a performance, a shield. And for years, almost nobody challenged it directly. Critics attacked his behavior, his language, his policies, his scandals. But very few people looked straight at the central claim itself and calmly asked, okay, then prove it. That is what made Colbert's setup so brutal, because he did not scream, he did not rant, he did not even sound angry, he sounded curious. And calm questions are dangerous when someone lives on emotional momentum. Colbert leaned into the camera with that slow, controlled smile that audiences already knew meant trouble was coming. Not loud trouble, quiet trouble, the kind that slowly closes around someone before they even realize it. He framed the challenge almost politely. If Trump constantly speaks about being a genius, if intelligence is such a central part of the image, then why not measure it? Simple. No insults, no name-calling, no dramatic accusations, just one question. And somehow, that question landed harder than 100 direct attacks ever could, because suddenly the audience was no longer debating politics. They were watching behavior, watching reactions, watching pressure. And pressure reveals things speeches never do. Trump fired back exactly how many expected. He mocked Colbert, dismissed the show, attacked late-night television, acted offended that the question even existed. But then something strange happened. The more he reacted, the more people started focusing on the reaction itself. Because if the challenge was ridiculous, why respond with so much energy? If the test meant nothing, why did it seem to hit such a nerve? That tiny contradiction became gasoline. Colbert saw it immediately, and instead of escalating emotionally, he slowed everything down. That was the masterstroke. Most people in a televised fight try to overpower the louder personality. Colbert did the opposite. He lowered the temperature, and somehow that made Trump look even hotter. So far, it has been a rough start to the school year for Donald Trump. His report card is definitely going to say has problems working and playing well with others. And there's not much we can do. What can we do? Because the Oval Office doesn't have any corners. You can't put him in a timeout. The audience laughed. But underneath the laughter, another feeling was forming. Recognition. People began noticing a pattern they had seen for years but never fully connected before. Every time Trump's intelligence was questioned, the response was never simple. It was never, here are the facts. Instead, it became personal, emotional, aggressive. The conversation would instantly move away from proof and toward dominance. Who insulted who won the room, who looked stronger, and Colbert kept dragging it back to one uncomfortable point. Why does a truly confident person need to constantly announce confidence? That question lingered. Because viewers knew something deep down. The smartest person in the room usually does not need to keep reminding everyone. Real intelligence tends to show itself naturally, in patience, in restraint, in precision, not endless self-promotion. And that is where the mood began changing. The crowd was still laughing, but now they were also analyzing. That is a dangerous combination for any public figure, especially one whose entire image depends on controlling perception. Then Colbert twisted the knife further, not with rage, with logic. He reminded viewers that intelligence is not measured by how loudly someone praises themselves. A brilliant leader does not need applause after every sentence. A secure person can tolerate criticism without exploding. A truly strong mind does not panic when challenged. And suddenly the IQ test stopped being about IQ. Now it was about insecurity, about ego, about why the challenge itself felt so threatening. And that was the turning point, because millions watching realized something uncomfortable. Trump was not really fighting Colbert anymore. He was fighting the possibility that people might stop automatically believing the myth. And once that possibility enters the room, every reaction matters more. Then came the moment that pushed everything into another level entirely. This morning, Donald Trump had an answer for that too. I think it's fake news, but if he did that, I guess we'll have to compare IQ tests and I can tell you who is going to win. The audience erupted, but Colbert was ready. Me too, because we have the results of their IQ test right here. Tillerson scored a 120. It's above average, not genius, but still pretty good. The timing was lethal, not because the joke itself was complicated, because of what it exposed. Trump could never resist the competition, even hypothetical competition. That was the psychological opening Colbert had been waiting for. The challenge was no longer theoretical. Now viewers could see the mechanism in real time. Trump heard IQ and instantly transformed it into a dominance contest. Not governance, not leadership, not policy, victory, winning, being seen as superior. And once viewers noticed that pattern, they could not unsee it. Colbert understood something many politicians never realize about television. People do not always remember arguments. They remember emotional behavior. They remember tension, defensiveness, overreaction, silence. And the silence after certain Colbert lines became incredibly loud, especially for older viewers, because many of them had spent decades dealing with people who constantly advertised themselves as geniuses. Bosses, salesmen, politicians, television personalities. They knew the difference between confidence and performance, and Colbert weaponized that instinct. He shifted the entire discussion away from intellectual bragging and towards something older Americans value far more: judgment, wisdom, humility, the ability to listen. He reminded audiences that grocery prices do not drop because a president calls himself brilliant. Wars do not end because someone says they have a massive IQ. Families do not feel safer because a politician dominates a comedian on television. Real leadership appears during pressure, during crisis, during moments when ego must step aside for reality. That point hit hard, because suddenly the audience was comparing two completely different energies on the screen. Trump, loud, reactive, defensive. Colbert, calm, controlled, patient. And human psychology automatically associates calmness with confidence. That is why the exchange became so damaging. Not because Colbert destroyed Trump with one joke, because he made viewers emotionally experience the contrast for themselves. And once audiences feel something emotionally, facts alone rarely reverse it. But then, the story took another turn, because Trump kept responding. And every new response deepened the trap. Every insult toward Colbert made the challenge look more important. Every angry comment made the original question feel more legitimate. It became a no-win situation. Take the test? Now the stunt becomes real. Ignore the test? People assume fear. Attack the comedian? The insecurity becomes visible. Colbert had quietly built a psychological box with almost no clean exits, and viewers sensed it. That is why the audience reactions grew louder each night. People were no longer just watching comedy. They were watching a public figure struggle against a framing he could not fully control. Trump wanted volume. Colbert wanted patience. Trump wanted dominance. Colbert wanted observation. Trump wanted the moment to feel emotional. Colbert wanted it to feel revealing. Huge difference. And then came the most devastating part of all. Colbert stopped making the story about intelligence completely. Instead, he made it about why the label genius had to be repeated so often in the first place. That question haunted the entire conversation. Because genuinely intelligent people rarely spend years advertising intelligence. Scientists do not open every sentence by announcing their IQ. Military leaders do not constantly brag about being mentally superior. Respected experts usually let results speak first. But Trump's public image depended heavily on repetition. Believe me, everybody says, nobody knows more than me. And repetition works, until someone calmly interrupts the rhythm. That interruption is what Colbert created. He forced viewers to pause and examine the performance instead of automatically absorbing it. That was the real threat, not the IQ test. Awareness. Because awareness breaks momentum, and momentum is everything in television branding. Suddenly people were not hearing stable genius the same way anymore. Now they heard effort, maintenance, overcompensation. The phrase started sounding less like confidence and more like advertising. That shift was subtle, but politically, subtle shifts can become massive over time. And Colbert knew exactly what he was doing. He understood that humiliation does not always come from a brutal insult. Sometimes it comes from making someone unknowingly expose themselves. That is far more powerful, because the audience reaches the conclusion on their own. and conclusions people reach emotionally tend to stick. Then something even stranger happened. The conversation escaped television completely. People online started repeating the central question everywhere. If he's so confident, why so defensive? That sentence spread because it was simple, dangerously simple. It turned a massive public persona into one tiny contradiction anyone could understand instantly. And the more Trump pushed back emotionally, the stronger the contradiction became. Viewers started revisiting old interviews, old speeches, old moments. Patterns emerged: the constant self-praise, the obsession with ratings, the fixation on winning every exchange. Suddenly, those things looked less like strength and more like hunger for validation. That was the real turning point, because once an audience begins interpreting confidence as insecurity, the entire image starts wobbling. And television audiences are brutally instinctive about weakness. They may forgive anger, they may forgive arrogance, but visible insecurity? That changes everything. Colbert sensed the momentum building and slowed down even more. That restraint made the tension unbearable. He did not scream victory. He did not celebrate. He simply kept asking versions of the same calm question. Why does this bother him so much? And every time Trump answered emotionally, the question answered itself. The audience could feel it happening in real time. That is why the laughter sounded different by the end. At first, people laughed because the exchange was funny. Later, they laughed because the pattern became obvious. And once a public pattern becomes obvious, it becomes very difficult to reverse. But the final moment was the one viewers remembered most. Because after all the jokes, all the reactions, all the insults, Colbert stripped the entire thing down to one brutal truth. The country does not need a president who wins imaginary IQ contests. It needs someone steady under pressure, someone who can hear criticism without collapsing into rage, someone who can focus on consequences instead of ego. And suddenly the room became quieter, because underneath the comedy was a deeply serious question about leadership itself. Not intelligence on paper, character under pressure. That is what made the exchange viral. Not politics alone, not comedy alone, human behavior. People are endlessly fascinated by moments when powerful individuals reveal emotion they are trying to hide. And that night, many viewers believed they saw exactly that. A tiny flash of panic underneath the confidence. A visible crack in the performance. And once people see a crack, they keep staring at it. By the end, Trump was still fighting, still attacking, still insisting. But Colbert no longer needed punchlines. The frame had already won. Because the strongest response to self-declared genius was never another insult. It was one calm question asked at exactly the right moment. If you're so sure, why are you so nervous? That line lingered far longer than any joke, because it forced viewers to measure something deeper than intelligence. Temperament, security, emotional control. And in that instant, the conversation stopped being comedy. It became a mirror reflecting the difference between loud confidence and genuine strength under pressure. And for millions watching that night, the silence after that realization was louder than anything Trump said afterward.